Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today we are finishing up season 4 of SpongeBob SquarePants with Best Day Ever and The Gift of Gum. So a very memorable episode because of the marketing, and an episode that is memorable to me because it's the theming of the season 4 DVD set. Though The Gift of Gum is also memorable in its own way, Best Day Ever feels a lot more like a proper ending to the season than its sister does, and not just because I like Best Day Ever more, but I'll save that discussion for later. And as always, I just have to say thank you to everyone watching today. It's an extra special thank you this time, given that this is the final review of Season 4, other than the overview, of course. And so it's really meaningful that you all are here today, still watching me do these videos, and I care about everyone watching, whether you're an old fan or a new one. Any support is welcome on this channel. Unless you're a Zionist, racist, colorist, homophobe, you get the gist. In that case, I honestly have no idea why you're here. Okay, back to what y'all are here for. Let's just get right into ending Season 4. Best Day Ever is Season 4's penultimate episode, even though it feels like the finale. This is an episode that everyone recognizes, I think. And to me, this episode is so interesting because despite being so famous, this episode for sure does not get the same kind of reception as an episode like Band Geeks. I think it's probably because this episode has been marketed to hell and back, just like Truth or Square was. Also, this episode not being a special is the biggest Mandela effect gotcha moment ever because what do you mean this episode's only 11 minutes? It feels like it has 3 acts, and it has that song, and it's been promoted heavily. But anyway, I feel like I'm about to commit blasphemy here, but maybe not. Maybe I won't get the pitchforks and torches today. Well, before we even start on the episode proper, things start off on a good note with the title card music being Earl's Revenge. That's one of my absolute favorite tracks. It was also the title card music for Good Neighbors, so it's not exactly an indicator of episode quality. I just like it. Anyway, speaking of music, this episode opens with a song that gets the plot rolling too. Now, it's time for my second blasphemy. I don't like the song Best Day Ever all that much. Tom Kenny's singing is good and the visuals are nice, but the production itself is not for me. I don't really like the backing track, but I will admit the song is catchy and I can get through it fine, but I frequently find myself turning it down or skipping whenever I happen to rewatch this episode. Other than that, I don't have much to say about this song. Wasn't it on the movie soundtrack? I wonder if they wrote the episode based on this song or if it's the other way around, and this episode was just in production very early on. Anyway, it's nice to see SpongeBob's plans for the day involving much of our main cast, and then SpongeBob literally exploding was pretty fun. Once the song ends, we get into our first of a series of disastrous events for SpongeBob's Best Day Ever. First, we have the Krusty Krab being condemned due to the Nematodes. I like how they made a skull on the Krusty Krab, but I won't call this scene super funny. SpongeBob trying to sing his song again was amusing, I'll say that. And SpongeBob's entire plight in this episode, stemming from his inability to adapt, fits perfectly within the part of his characterization highlighted in Party Pooper Pants, so I love that. It also lends more support to my personal belief that SpongeBob is autistic, so there's that. But unlike that episode, this part of him isn't demonized in this one, so it automatically makes this episode better. Anyway, we then get a pretty similar moment to Jellyfish Jam with SpongeBob's nose fluting, leading the nematodes away. I'm just glad that this episode didn't pull in all that glitters and have SpongeBob in his underwear for the rest of the time. Next, we move on to Sandy's place, which is probably the part of this episode that I forget the most for some reason. Like, I always remember that SpongeBob's plan involved the Krusty Krab, jellyfishing in Squidward's concert, but not so much karate with Sandy. Anywho, because this episode is about misfortune falling upon SpongeBob's Best Day Ever, today is the day Sandy's tree dome has a leak. Luckily for Sandy, but not luckily for SpongeBob, his new adhesive karate gloves fix that problem nicely. This scene is also not particularly funny. In fact, nothing about this scene is really all that funny, and it's kind of a bit of a lull compared to what we've been seeing so far, so that's probably why I found it to be so forgettable over the years. Moving on, we've got the next activity on SpongeBob's list, jellyfishing with Patrick. And see, this scene starts walking on thin ice immediately once Patrick starts crying, because I don't know what it is, but that sound sets off Kill Bill sirens in my head. Luckily, SpongeBob has his old net with him, which he generously gives to Patrick. But then, of course, Patrick pulls a Christmas Who and breaks the net immediately. And see, instead of passively taking in all these scenes like I have been, this time I'm annoyed because instead of SpongeBob actively doing something to fix the situation, whether accidentally or not, Patrick just takes his net from him and proceeds to not give SpongeBob a turn with it. SpongeBob allowed it, but Patrick's immediate thought to ask SpongeBob for his net when the two are supposed to jellyfish together is not good. I think this scene annoys me more than the others also because the problem that prevents SpongeBob from being able to do the activity with the character is by Patrick's own design. He keeps breaking the nets, not the jellyfish. It would have been better if the jellyfish kept, I don't know, zapping the wooden nets to pieces, but they have no effect on the metal one. And as I say that, let's just forget how metal conducts electricity for a moment. Anyway, back to my complaining. Patrick is just selfish here, while Mr. Krabs and Sandy aren't that. I think that I'm most annoyed by the fact that even with one net, SpongeBob and Patrick could have still had fun, unlike the situations with Sandy and Mr. Krabs where they had real problems to resolve. But no, Patrick just takes SpongeBob's net and doesn't give him a chance to jellyfish either. This part of SpongeBob's day is ruined as well. It's giving yours, mine, and mine. So yes, I'm annoyed by this scene, straight up. By this point, I'm relieved when we finally move on to SpongeBob heading to Squidward's concert, and I'm lucky too because we get to see another gorgeous background in this segment. SpongeBob's sad rendition of Best Day Ever is, I don't know. It's not enjoyable or unenjoyable, it's just another part of the episode, you know? In a way, it's almost sad seeing SpongeBob this broken down, but that's the point. So, it's effective at least. I like SpongeBob's optimism about Squidward's concert though, and I like how we all basically know what's about to go down. Something will happen to make SpongeBob unable to go to the concert. In line with at least 2 out of 3 scenes so far, that thing should have been the concert being cancelled or something. And that is what happens. For a minute. Now, that minute is low-key the best part of this episode so far. SpongeBob slapping Squidward and giving him a pep talk is great, and I love how he's talking to both Squidward and himself. SpongeBob's not taking this unfortunate situation lying down, and I love that. Unfortunately, things take a horrendous turn once SpongeBob fixes the reed with his own tooth. At this point, that's basically symbolism of how he's been giving so much for himself all day for the benefit of others. I know that it was just a humorous joke, but I mean, it's possible to have unintentional symbolism. Again, I overthink this show. It's what I do. Anyway, back to what I was saying about why things go bad from here. See, because after SpongeBob gets Squidward into the building again, we're forced to sit through an excruciating, terribly annoying, frustrating sequence of events, with SpongeBob somehow not having his ticket for the concert. SpongeBob's attempts to get in aren't even that funny, mostly because I sit here thinking about how he's probably missing the show, which you'll never believe what actually happens in the episode. And then, of course, once SpongeBob says his name, which he never did the entire time he was trying to get in, suddenly the usher is like, "Oh, you're a VIP." Okay then. That was plot convenience, I know that, but considering I'm already frustrated, I don't feel very forgiving of this plot convenience. And then SpongeBob finally gets to go to the concert and have this one last thing. Psych! The concert's over! SpongeBob did not get a single thing he wanted during his best day ever! I wouldn't even be so upset about this if it wasn't for the fact that the last 4 to 5 minutes were both very annoying scenes, other than the nice minute-long reprieve of Squidward. And also, why exactly do I want to see an episode about SpongeBob having his dreams crushed? Not fun. I've talked about this exact thing with Stuck in the Ringer of all episodes. I'm failing to see how it can be super entertaining to watch this childish, happy-go-lucky character go through so much shit. Now, unlike that episode, which believe me, will be torn a new asshole. This episode at least has SpongeBob win in the end. SpongeBob's outburst is great, and I love how he just yells at that guy to sit down. That was hilarious. And then I love how his friends came up to the stage to support him. It does tug at my heartstrings a bit to see SpongeBob so upset about this. And I love how everyone comes together to talk about how SpongeBob made their days better that day. It helps make everything not seem so bad for the little guy. It makes me think of Sponge on the Run, which is a great movie, by the way. Also, I loved the steel guitar and ukulele arrangement of Best Day Ever that played in the background of this scene. This episode actually has plenty of great arrangements of the titular song playing in the background, and I loved all of them. Lastly, the ending of this episode is just so damn wholesome, with some funny moments in there too, with Mr. Krabs, Squidward, Sandy, and Patrick coming together to put on this play for SpongeBob to let him go through his perfect day, all to the sounds of a reprise of Best Day Ever. That was just wholesome and adorable, especially at the very end, when the theater is empty and Patrick and Sandy are asleep, and Squidward asks how long they have to keep this up, and Mr. Krabs says, just till his little heart gives out. Like, that's so wholesome that all of them, including Squidward, did this for SpongeBob. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm counting this as a Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob father-son moment. I love my crumbs. This ending is honestly too good for an episode that was so not good for almost every moment until the ending, but maybe that's part of what makes it so good. It's so fucking cathartic. Best Day Ever is complicated. Without the ending, this episode would have been okay tier at best, probably most likely mediocre when I think of just how annoying a significant portion of this episode was, and then how dull the other portions were with only a few good jokes and moments throughout to keep me somewhat buoyed. But as you all may recall from episodes like Dumped, a good ending can really make me forgive a lot of stuff. And I'd say that the whole point of this episode was to have this wholesome ending, make SpongeBob go through all this crap so that he can have the best day ever he desired and has now earned. But the crap he went through, the audience was also forced through, which I think was a mistake. The ending and that glorious scene between SpongeBob and Squidward is what carries this episode into my good tier by the skin of its teeth, coming in with a score of 7 out of 10. Next up is, of course, the very last episode of Season 4, The Gift of Gum. Since I don't feel like making you guys wait on this, let me just say that we will unfortunately not be going out with a bang. The Gift of Gum is nowhere near that good, but it isn't a bad episode either. It's simply decent. Let's discuss. So, at the very least, I gotta say that I'm happy because this episode starts off with a track I love, Kahlua Jubilee. Like usual, these tracks I mentioned are in the description in case you need a reminder of what tracks they are. I feel like it's important to point out that I love the background music in this show. I've definitely said that before, but it's never a bad time for a refresher on that little fact. Anyway, going back to the actual episode now, The Gift of Gum wastes no time in bringing us to the gummy horror that is Patrick's best friend's day gift to SpongeBob. I mean, it's definitely wholesome that these two are celebrating this day. Too bad Patrick's gift is literally disgusting. SpongeBob's crying was also a little unnecessary and makes the scene drag. I'm all for dramatics, which I'm sure I've never said before, but these dramatics feel out of place here. That robot servant SpongeBob got Patrick is pretty cool. I liked its voice. And I like that Patrick loves his gift, because if they started this episode with Patrick being ungrateful or something, my frustration would have gone through the roof immediately. Patrick saying bye to his gummy is entertaining enough, and also emphasizes how nasty this thing is. SpongeBob then trying to move the huge thing is similarly amusing, but not really funny. And then SpongeBob realizes what the rest of us already have, that this giant gumball is fucking gross. I love the horror elements of this scene though, as the ball starts moving and things ooze out of it. I think my biggest issue with these first few minutes is that I'm confused about SpongeBob here. He seemed genuinely happy about his gift, given he cried over how good it was and how bad his was in comparison. Then he struggled with getting it inside, and the point I'm making here is that he wanted it inside his house. And then, even though he'd already been looking at it before, he finally acknowledges that this thing is gross, and suddenly now it's time to get rid of it? First off, SpongeBob could have just put this thing in his backyard. And then also, the shift is too abrupt. It would have been better if SpongeBob had been reluctant to accept the gift in the first place, or if we spent more time with SpongeBob realizing that this just isn't the gift for him. As it is, it's a bit too much whiplash. I'm not sure if the implication is supposed to be that SpongeBob was acting earlier, or if he just didn't think of the practicalities of having this giant gumball in this house and was only considering the sentimentality of the gift earlier. Either way, the execution clearly didn't work quite right for me, given how I'm questioning all of these things and it's taking me out of the episode. Then we move to the part of the episode where SpongeBob tries to get rid of Gummy without Patrick knowing. And see, I can feel my annoyance levels beginning to rise because first off, Patrick has no right to be all mad about this. Even if we do find out later that he was reluctant to part with Gummy anyway, the gift is now SpongeBob's. He can do what he likes with it. And also, he should have known better than to give SpongeBob a giant ball of possessive gum, but SpongeBob also having no spine throughout this entire segment makes it drag on for too long, though it is a little entertaining to see SpongeBob's plans continually foiled. I think my favorite one is when he's trying to push Gummy into a hole and Patrick catches him and SpongeBob just deflates. But then we get back to not so entertaining once Patrick literally sticks Gummy onto SpongeBob's house. Things pick back up again with the scene between SpongeBob and Gary, though. Y'all know I love me some Gary, and also some SpongeBob and Gary interactions, and the whole part where the light bulb clearly goes off in both of their heads is great. We need more of SpongeBob and Gary scheming. This is brilliant. And I like the gag of Gary zipping his mouth and eyes. Anyway, SpongeBob trying to steal Gummy is an interesting plan, and I love how he ends up just sinking into it. Like, that's a bit horrifying, especially once we see that other people have been trapped in there. It's a good bit of random comedy, too, as that gag basically serves zero purpose other than to be random and funny, and the people who escape don't appear again and aren't addressed again. Some of the best comedy in this show are the random gags like that, so don't think I'm complaining, cause I'm not at all. And then we reach the next portion of this episode, which has legitimately kind of horrifying imagery, with the gum being everywhere and SpongeBob being stuck in it, not to mention him sounding completely dead inside. Like, what even was that? I loved it. Sandy being a part of this episode too is a nice surprise. Sandy's attempt to free SpongeBob using the truck is, again, entertaining, but not particularly funny. The ending of it is kind of funny, though, because the horrendous way it backfires, and we get some good screaming reactions from Sandy and SpongeBob. From here, Squidward enters the episode because of the gum now getting all over Con Street. And I love how Squidward's like, don't get involved, and walks away, and the gum is like, nah, you're getting involved, and flings him out of the window, adding him to the list of people stuck. Once Patrick returns, I thought the bit with the robot continually interrupting the conversation was pretty funny, particularly because of Patrick's reactions. It reminds me a lot of the Sheldon moment in Plankton's Army. And then we find out that Patrick misses his gummy and wants it back, which is pretty much expected given how we've seen him act all episode. At least the conflict is resolved quick, with Patrick just chewing all the gum, or it is resolved until Patrick ends up blowing a huge gum bubble and completely covering everything in gum. I thought this ending was good though, because the art looks really good, and because Patrick's last line was cute. There really isn't all that much to say about this episode. When watching it, it felt a lot shorter than it actually was. The ending was great, but the rest of it was kinda meh. Similar to Best Day Ever, now that I think about it. My main issue with The Gift of Gum is that it's not really all that funny and only decently entertaining otherwise. A few scenes also end up dragging too long, which doesn't help with the episode feeling short. I also think that a few things in this episode are terribly abrupt, like SpongeBob's change of heart, or the robot becoming overbearing. Because of the very simple plot of this episode, it would have been better if it was a collection of gags, but as I said before, it wasn't very funny. So with all this in mind, I think this episode belongs in my okay tier, where it comes in with a score of 6.4 out of 10. Turns out that this is the only episode of Season 4 to be placed in this tier. It's actually kind of a fairly difficult tier to reach because you have to be worse than good, but not personally annoy or irritate or terribly bore me like a mediocre tier episode would. A delicate balance. As always, gotta end this video with some closing thoughts of mine. The first thing I want to say is that I find it interesting how both of these episodes I have similar thoughts about, with the whole just the ending of it being actually really good and the rest varying in quality. I wouldn't say this is something that happens very often. Usually it can be hard to stick the landing, but I guess when the episode isn't all that good, sticking the landing might actually be easier in a way. And then there's episodes that don't stick the beginning, middle, or ending. But I'd say that in this season, only The Thing and Hocus Pocus fit that bill. Overall, there's very few episodes of this show that do. Alright, so now the second thing I want to say. Wow, it's the end of Season 4! It's so weird to me that we're already here because it feels like I just started this season. And I'm not going to beat around the bush, so let me put it plainly. There is a non-zero chance that after the Season 4 overview video, I'm going to have to go on hiatus again. Nothing as long as the previous hiatus, don't worry, but it is possible. Only because my new job is wearing me out, and so it's hard to work on videos. But it's just a summer job, so once I get settled in grad school, I'd be able to pick up the video making again. But again, this is all just a possibility. It's also possible that I'll scale back on how many videos I put out a week to make the workload more manageable, or I keep on like I am now with 2 uploads a week. All of these are possible, and I'll let you all know what I plan to do, of course. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and end this video now, and I'll see you all when I put out my big review of Season 4.